So, hopefully, now you're thinking about all of the creative elements that you can tie into your lesson plans, but maybe having some issues imagining how to lay it all out or what it would actually look like in lesson plan format. So, I created a few examples that I hope will help you feel a little bit more comfortable with that uncertainty. So, here is just a very basic outline of what cohort A might be working on through 1 week. And just to clarify, we're not planning double time every day, that what cohort A does on Monday is what cohort B should do on Tuesday. So in this example, you can kick off the week remotely with a welcome to the week video, just a quick glimpse of your face and an overview of what students are going to be working on throughout the week. Maybe you'll design some sort of a launch activity and have a flipped instructional lesson with some low stakes practice and formative assessment to just gauge how much students were able to learn without you being there in person. On Tuesday, face-to-face, you can begin by reviewing and remediating, reinforcing what they learned the day before, and follow that with some guided practice where you kind of move through a more depth of knowledge, get to the more complicated parts of the lesson that students need to be with you. And that should lead into application and maybe even some guided reflection. And the rest of the week kind of unfolds in a pattern that follows that. In another example, you might start remotely with some sort of an assigned reading, and that could be followed by an online discussion where students are referring back to the text using evidence, but also we are carving out that opportunity for them to be social and to interact. There could be some sort of informal formative assessment, maybe even just a simple demonstration of learning. So what could they do to depict the theme in a chapter and represent that visually? On Tuesday, maybe you have your face-to-face lesson, and so you want to hold that taking the instructional piece of it into the face-to-face class. And this is definitely appropriate, like I said, especially at the beginning of the year until we teach students and get them acclimated to learning at a distance. Maybe you would decide to have some sort of a project launch where you build some intrigue about a topic that they're going to be working on, and then you'll see that that will continue throughout the rest of the week. So remotely, hopefully students could have access to some sort of reteaching resources so that as they start to work on their project and apply what they've learned, they can look back at that stuff or maybe even look at resources that were created previously that they'll be integrating into this project as well. And as the rest of the week unfolds, again, a similar pattern. So a face-to-face lesson with guided practice and differentiation, and using that role of being a mentor that can connect learners to whatever resources are necessary for their project. And that might be pretty individualized. A third example might look something like this. So remotely, maybe there's some sort of inquiry launch activity and students are encouraged to explore and kind of use a constructivist approach to build some meaning based on their exploration and making observations and things like that. And throughout that process, we could be, instead of having them answer questions, what about encouraging them to ask questions or to generate questions and pique some curiosity so that when we have them in class on Tuesday face-to-face, we can kind of unpack those learning objectives and be really clear about what the rest of the week is going to look like and what their goal will be. And then guide the exploration process a little bit. So as they started to create these questions, now can we help them to find the answers to them? Teachers can clarify information and really just help to facilitate a little bit of inquiry there. Remotely on Wednesday, they'd continue to work through that process. And here I call it a structured inquiry process, which would really be having them go through organized steps of seeking information that relate to the question. And they can even navigate teacher curated materials that you have prepared for them, either in Schoology or even linked in Schoology to some sort of outside source like a Wakelet or even just a a Google site or something like that. We want them to have access to some sort of on-demand video lessons as needed. So throughout their inquiry, there are going to be points where they need some direct instruction. And if they can access it as needed or when they're ready, and you house that somewhere, then they can get to that remotely. Thursday could be class discussion focused on mixed media texts that they explored individually. So maybe there are some things in that curation of materials that now they can have conversations about, either guided by you or even in small groups, more student-led discussion. And as that unfolds, then you can have some students continue to work through inquiry while you meet with individuals for guidance and reflection and feedback. So maybe several of the students in the class are continuing through the next step of the process while you pull 2 or 3 at a time and really sit with them and have conversations about where they are and what their needs are. And of course, on Friday, continuing out maybe into their own investigations and resources a little bit more, so a little bit less structured, but certainly ending the week with some sort of a documentation of their progress. That could be a blog or a vlog or a journal or a portfolio or even just a really informal self-assessment of the progress that they've made. And a fourth example, this one is based on a hyperdoc, which is most of the resources that you'll see that are created for blended instruction are based on an inquiry framework that was developed in a response to the really unique nature of this. And a big part of that is trying to foster agency in students. So we know through research on motivation that we are so much more motivated to do things that we're invested in. And if students have lots of choices about things and can align some of what they're learning based on their interests, they'll be much more motivated to work through that. So that's the kind of the framework that hyperdocs are built on. But the pieces of hyperdocs then could be laid out something like this, beginning remotely with the beginning portions where we're really building the foundation. So engaging them, they start to explore, and we provide some explanations for them, and then they provide some explanations based on that. But the more complex part of it happens in class face-to-face with ongoing coaching and feedback. So students get to that apply and share process. Now, hyperdocs really could take a couple of weeks to complete and might cycle back for more exploration and explanation as well, digging a little further into a topic, and that may happen several times. But the face-to-face time really being reserved for, number one, bringing the feedback and the grade, like instead of having to grade things that kids are working on remotely, really bringing that process back into the classroom and using your time with them to offer coaching and feedback in real time.